They picked a guy who hates JD Vance? I think you mean they picked a guy.
Annuncio vobis
I announce
gaudium
to you
magnum.
a great joy.
Habemus papam.
We have a pope.
I don't know how to find old polymarket data. What were the odds on this guy? Like 1% or 2% or something like that. Look, betting on a conclave is literally just gambling. It's not like an election where there's polling. Like, the only people who know who's going to be the next pope are the cardinals, and they don't talk about it.
Eminentissimum.
The most eminent
Ac reverendissimum
and a reverend
Dominum Robertum Franciscum.
Robert
Sancte Romane
Francis,
Ecclesiae
Cardinal of the Holy
Cardinale
The first
Roman
American Pope has been elected. Cardinal Prevost.
Qui sibi nomen imposuit
Who has chosen the
Leonem
name
decimum
Well,
quartum.
Cardinal Prevost, the
Leo
first
XIV.
American Pope in history, Chicago-born, has been elected as the 267th successor of St. Peter. Cardinal Prevost was the leader of the Vatican's office for the dicastery of bishops, the Vatican's dicastery for bishops. He is someone who spent many years as bishop in Peru, as a missionary in Peru. He was bishop of Chicago.
This guy's a conservative, right? No. Okay, a lot of things. For one, this guy was basically Francis's second-hand man. He was like Archbishop Bishop. Like, his job was selecting other bishops. Like, this guy was appointed as a bishop by Francis and then promoted twice again by Francis. Oh, so he was guaranteed? No, that's not how it works. They're voted on. He's the first American pope. He spent a lot of his life in Rome and in Peru, but he was born in Chicago. He's conservative to us. Well, kind of. He's been one of the more active social media voices on JD Vance and Donald Trump. In fact, if you go check his Twitter, I think the literal last things he tweeted were condemnations of JD Vance and retweeting a condemnation of Donald Trump. He has some conservative statements about LGBT issues dating back about 12, 13 years ago. That's what people seem to be attributing to him, but it seems like for the most part he's been quiet about them since getting promoted by Francis. There are some accusations against him that he was like moderate or not very on the spot about dealing with sexual abuse accusations that were levied against people under his command. It wasn't him personally. It was that people under him, people under his authority, were accused of sexual abuse. I believe he encouraged one of the women who alleged the abuse to go to civil authorities, but he wasn't very like active in opening up like a in church, you know, like a clerical investigation. So how do they determine he's the voice of God on earth? By a majority vote, I assume. He does have a bachelor's in mathematics. That's true. Two-thirds, thank you. Francis also became more progressive in LGBT issues after he became the Pope. Yeah, keep in mind, like, he hasn't really spoken that much in those issues for quite a while. It gives me the impression that he's probably moved to the left over time, especially if he was that close to Francis. My impression, my feeling, there's a Twitter account called like Pope Crave, which said much the same thing, and I'm agreeing with them. I think that an American Pope was chosen to counter American influence, not to play into it. The idea, there are some people on Twitter who are acting like an American Pope is like kowtowing to the Trump regime. I think that's a ridiculous low IQ take. For one, he literally has a history of condemning Trump and JD Vance, so I don't understand what the argument is there. But for two, he speaks English, though he didn't accept the papacy in English, mind you. He's literally from Chicago, and he's a dual American and Latin American citizen. I think he was chosen in part to oppose American influence, especially on issues like immigration, and in part because he's been like an insider, right? Because he was close to Francis, because he was in charge of approving cardinal promotions. I mean, if you want to know whether he's conservative or not, go check your local like American Tradcath Twitter account. They're not happy right now.
Clio in Peru. He was the leader of the Augustinian order, which is a worldwide religious order. He is known as an experienced and wise leader who can bring together people from different points of view. I can see there Cardinal Supich from Chicago, who looks quite happy with the news. This is really an extraordinary moment.
This is an extraordinary moment, and of course, I sit here as an American. Whatever it would have been, I think you can't but moved to tears.
He's also very much a compromise choice between Tagle Zuppi side / Erdo Serra side. I don't think they were ever going to pick a conservative. That being said, for one, I thought it was very funny that when the smoke burned white, the poly market odds went to 100% for the one conservative choice out of the 4 that were listed, and it was none of them. But like all the poly market people were like, oh, new pope chosen, it must be a conservative. Then they all lost their money. Nobody made money off this. At least not very many people. Buy the dip. I don't know if this was a compromise. I feel like, so we have to recognize right now that America is the dwelling of Satan right now. We are the bastion of global evil. All other evil regimes, or at least the prominent ones, march to the beat of our drum. They follow in our footsteps. We lead that part of the world. We are the great Satan, like basically, literally, okay? If somebody like Tagle, a Filipino progressive, had been made pope, how much influence do you think that kind of pope realistically could have over the United States and its foreign affairs? And its Catholics? Probably not that much, I'm going to guess. Tagle might have been the most progressive, or one of the most, Tagle Zuppi might have been the most progressive options. But having an American pope, somebody who speaks clear English, they all, I mean, speak English to an extent, but you know what I mean. Somebody born in Chicago, somebody who's an American Peruvian citizen, I think this isn't about a compromise at all. I think this is the guy. When it comes to opposing American Satanism, I think this is the guy, in my opinion. I mean, look at this. Robert Prevost, Twitter. I'm dead naming the Pope. Why can't I find the Twitter? There we go. Last tweet, a retweet condemning Trump and Bukele. Also, by the way, not a very moderate tweet here, as Trump and Bukele use Oval to laughing crying emoji, Fed's illicit deportation of a U.S. resident, bit.ly link. Once an undocked Salvadoran himself, now DCO Evelio asks, can you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet? It's not just like a banal condemnation of immoral behavior. It's like kind of a, listen, by the standards of a cardinal, not sure if you've mentioned it, but Pope Leo XIII, the last Leo, was known as the workers' pope and was very progressive for the 1890s. Yeah, the only thing that I know is that Leo hasn't been chosen in quite a while. But I guess that's often the case. You know, there are so many pope names. I don't know much about Pope Leo the 13th. I don't know anything about him. All right, I now know one thing about him. He's dripped up to the gills. So your suggestion is that the reason the new pope chose Leo is to sort of like hearken to this progressive era? He is well known for his intellectualism and his attempts to define the position of the Catholic Church with regard to modern thinking. In his famous 1891 encyclical Rerum Novarum, Pope Leo outlined the rights of workers to a fair wage, safe working conditions, the formation of trade unions while affirming the rights to property and free enterprise, opposing both socialism and laissez-faire capitalism. We stand an FDR New Deal social democratic pope. Thank you, Leo XIII. Listen, all right, by the standards of somebody born in 1810, you know, you take what you can get. This guy was more or less around for the beginning of capitalism. He was popularly titled as the social pope and the pope of the workers. Huh. Why didn't he stop it? Pope Leo XIII, why didn't you stop capitalism? Pope? Leo XIII is particularly remembered for his belief that pastoral activity in political sociology was a vital mission of the church as a vehicle of social justice and maintaining the rights and dignities of the human person. Damn. All right, well, you know what? I'll read up more on this later, but okay. I mean, like, that's his opening paragraph. It seems like he's left a legacy. He was the last pope to use the name Leo until the election of Leo XIV in 2025. Yes, but the Rerum Novarum was also a great influencer on the corporatist economic structure advocated by the Italian and Portuguese fascist regimes. Okay, well, you know what? Mussolini was a thug for, like, local socialist union organizers to begin with, all right? Fascism is idiosyncratic. What do you want? Goddamn. All right, well.
But this is stunning.
Leo the 14th.
Leo the 14th.
Now, that's
is his
significant.
name.
Pope Leo the 13th. A pope of Catholic social teaching and Catholic social doctrine.
They asked no more than
who
me.
Stood up for workers. A pope on the side of the poor. And Cardinal Prevost, Pope Leo XIV, I should say, has chosen that name. That is a big statement. That is really an extraordinary moment. We all thought, people were thinking it was going to be an Italian.
Yes.
They thought they were the front runner. But as we said, as I reported, an American was not ruled out. They were looking at American.
And you were saying this was possible. It was only today when it moved as fast as it moved that everyone said, well, it must be an Italian. But let's just say this again. Cardinal Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV.
That is interesting, too. There has long been a bias against having an American pope. Like, this has been, I know this has been a subject in previous conclaves as well. Ever since World War II, the idea basically being, don't Americans have enough? Essentially that, like, well, okay, Americans already run, like, the first, like, the Western world. They already run the first world, right? You want to give them the papacy as well? But
Is an American, currently cardinal from Chicago, and is now the first American pope in history. Let's watch Leo XIV coming out. Let's watch.
oh shit, he's gonna hit him with it. He is choosing to wear the traditional garb rather than the plain white robes that Francis wore, but I think Francis was unique in that respect. Like, even if we have future progressive popes, I don't think you can expect them all to be like Francis in terms of, like... Francis wasn't a pope, okay? Francis was like a pope monk. Like, he was extremely... I was about to say performative. I don't think it was performative at all, but he was over the top with his humility. So I don't think that's going to be common, you know? He was a Jesuit, right? Yeah, the only Jesuit pope, right? His humility was very much performative. Man, I don't know, man. He spent his whole time as Pope living in, like, the guest quarters of the Vatican. I mean, you could say, I don't think he would have lost anything by indulging a little bit in the pleasures of the world, but he just didn't, you know? Well. He does look quite stressed, by the way. I wouldn't be stressed driving around that bulletproof glass car thing, least stressed. Didn't Francis have the Pope Mobile donated to the Diocese of Jerusalem so that it could be used as an aid vehicle? Probably because, like, in a last blow against Israel, he wants future headlines to say Israel drone strikes Pope Mobile, thus securing Catholic hatred for the Israeli regime for another 1,000 years. They're gonna have a Vatican III and undo the Vatican II. Unironically, by the an unbelievably hateful move from Francis towards Israel. The idea that it has that it's aid to the people in Gaza. No. He knows what he's doing here, okay? That was a last fuck you. Unbelievable headline farming for the future. Incredible stuff. Mark of a true hater. Oh yeah, for those of us who have not, who have arrived since we first did the roundup, basically, first American Pope has a history of being accused of not dealing with sexual abuse cases well. He has not himself been accused. It's more like he's had an administrative role for a long time, and he has been accused of handling these situations poorly. To be fair, that accusation's been levied at a lot of people, including Francis. And he has previously made statements that I think would be described as moderate within the context of the Catholic Church on LGBT issues, but has been mostly quiet on them for the past decade and a half or so, ever since getting appointed by Francis. This guy was basically Francis's right-hand man. My opinion, I think he has potential to be a genuine second woke. Apparently, his choosing of the name Leo is significant because the last Pope Leo was a progressive, like famously so. And also, my belief is that this is the first American Pope specifically because America is the new great Satan, and he has been chosen to counter American influence, particularly with regard to global fascism and anti-immigrant sentiment. Like, there were more textually progressive papal candidates, right, like Zuppi or Tagle, but they would not have had the same influence on America and American Catholics as this guy could. That is my opinion. I don't know.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace be with you all.
Fratelli, sorelle carissimi.
Dearest brothers and sisters,
Questo è il primo saluto del Cristo risorto.
this is the first
Il buon
greetings
pastore
of the
che ha dato
resurrected
la
Christ,
vita per il gregge di Dio.
the good shepherd who has given up his life for God. And I should also like this greeting of peace to enter our hearts and your families, and to all those people, wherever they are, all peoples throughout the world. Peace be with you.
Questa è la pace di Cristo risorto.
Remember that Italy's fascist right now? Yeah, but they're not that serious about it. Same as when they went fascist last time. Don't they have really high support for gay marriage? Or am I thinking of a different country? Italy support gay marriage. What percentage? What's the polling? Why can't I find the polling? I swear to God, I saw they had really high. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, keep in mind that everybody who's watching the Pope from the Vatican City right now is a devout Catholic. It's religious to them. Like, if you go on social media and you see someone who claims to be a Catholic and they are, like, crashing out over this pick, they're not really a Catholic. Again, papal infallibility. It's really, really, really simple. They don't believe that a political decision was made by the cardinals to choose a pope. They believe God acted through the cardinals to decide on the pope. That's why they pray before they submit the votes. The idea is that God is acting through them. It's doctrinally incorrect to suggest that it would be like with a political pick or something. It's God's chosen. So anyone who's freaking out about the political, oh well, you know, they're biased, anti-Trump, whatever, like, it's just, you don't actually believe in the gospel, my man.
This is the peace of the resurrected Christ, a humble and perseverant peace which comes from God, God who loves us all.
Pew Research Center poll conducted between February and May 2023 showed that 74% of Italians supported same-sex marriage. Pew Research, high reliability, 74%, 3/4. That's more than America. Again, they're just not that, like, committed to fascism in Italy. They're too busy, like, I don't know, getting drinks. This isn't Italy. Shut the fuck up, you pedant.
Conditionally.
Ancora conserviamo nei nostri orecchi.
Let us keep in our ears the weak voice of Pope Francis that blesses Rome.
Il Papa che benediva Roma.
The Pope who blessed Rome gave his blessing to the world, to the entire world, that morning of Easter. Allow me to follow up on that blessing. God loves us. God loves everyone. Evil will not prevail. We are all in the hands of God. Therefore, without fear, united, hand in hand with God and amongst ourselves, let us go forward. We are the disciples of Christ. Christ goes before us. The world needs his light. Humanity needs him like the bridge to God and his love. Help us and all others to build bridges with dialogue, with meeting, to be one common people, living always in peace. Thank you to Pope Francis.
Has Nick Fuentes given his thoughts? I maintain there are no American conservative Catholics. Not politically conservative, not active in politics conservative. You can tell, by the way, because there are, and you can find them, I know these people, you can find conservative Catholics on Twitter who actually believe in God right now, who are grumbling, but they're grumbling in the most contrite and faithful way you could imagine, you know? Like, I pray that in these troubled times, God has sent us, you know, a voice on earth who will shepherd us through the woke or something. Like, they follow the doctrine of papal infallibility. No American Catholic does, at least not like white American Catholic. You know who I'm talking about, these fake like tradcath converts or whatever. None of them actually believe in it. None of them believe in papal infallibility. Look at how they've talked about Francis the past 15 years. They're not Catholics. I actually like this speech quite a bit. Oh yeah, it's nice. Personally, I think that one of the big dubs of this is that by choosing an insider, the guy whose job it was to pick cardinals, this guy has the potential to continue Francis's legacy of cementing progressivism within the Catholic Church, in continuing to appoint cardinals, in continuing the ongoing pattern of picking relatively progressive people. You can affect more long-standing institutional change than just by being like an outsider who's very progressive, right? We'll see how it goes. Us Irish/German/Italian Catholics are truly religious. See, I don't I don't know if you're doing a bit, but like I know a few European Catholic conservatives via family and friend ties, and the difference between the way they talk about this shit and the way American Catholics talk about this shit is unbelievable. Genuinely. American tradcats are literally just like Crusader LARP Protestants. They're evangelicals, in the sense that they also don't believe in God.
I should also like to thank all my cardinal brethren who have chosen me to be the successor of Peter and to walk with you as a united church, always seeking peace and justice, seeking to work with men and women who are faithful to Jesus Christ, without fear, to proclaim the gospel, to be missionaries.
He is pretty young for a pope.
Sono un figlio di Sant'Agostino.
I am a son of St. Augustinian,
Che ha detto,
Augustine, who said,
con voi sono cristiano e per
with
voi
you I am a
vescovo.
Christian, and for you a bishop. And I think in that sense we can all walk together to that homeland, that home which God has prepared.
The Pope is infallible only when he speaks ex cathedra. A Catholic can disagree with the Pope, they don't worship the Pope. Yeah, but like, let's not... Listen, when the American fake Catholics are disagreeing with Pope Francis, they are not disagreeing with his, I don't know, fashion choices or his, like, opinions on ice cream, okay? They're disagreeing with the ex-cathedra opinions, and they don't worship the Pope, but he is the envoy, right? Like, it's, like, I understand that when I say papal infallibility, I'm kind of painting over a bit of complexity here, but... if you get into the complexity, the underlying point remains the same, which is that they are not disagreeing with Pope Francis on trivial, non-doctrinal matters, right? They are directly criticizing him on the ex cathedra declarations.
For us.
Alla Chiesa
To the Church
di Roma, un
of Rome,
saluto speciale.
a very special greeting.
Dobbiamo cercare insieme come essere una chiesa missionaria.
We have to seek together to be a missionary church, a church that builds bridges and dialogue, always ready to accept, like this great piazza with its arms. We have to show our charity, presence, and be in dialogue with love. And I'd also like to say a greeting in Spanish to all those who, and particularly to my dearest beloved diocese in Peru, where a faithful people accompanied their bishop to share their faith with him, and who has done so much to be a faithful church. To all you, brothers and sisters of Rome, of Italy, of the entire world, We must be a synod.
Pope Francis never spoke ex cathedra. The last time was in 1950 by Pope Pius XII, I think. No, the formal declaration of ex cathedra is not the standard by which people actually practice and like apply papal infallibility. Yes, it's very, very uncommon for a pope to sit down and say, like, this is doctrine. Like it essentially never happens. But the statements from the Pope on matters of Catholic teaching extend beyond just what is officially declared ex cathedra. Papal infallibility applies to statements, teachings of Christ in the Church. You know, that's why. Remember when Francis said, "This is not doctrine, but I hope that hell is empty." Why would he have to say that if the only ex cathedra statement had been made? Like 70 years ago. The last time it was made was 70 years ago. You know? Like it's like you're talking about consistency in the application of rules for an institution that is literally thousands of years old, right? Official ex cathedra statements are not common at all, but in a practical sense, the Pope speaks all the time on matters of doctrine. And those statements are not held by followers of Christ, by Catholics, as just like political statements, you know? Like, oh, that's just his opinion. That's not the word of Christ. No, that's a little bit the word of Christ. It's just a little bit. Just a smidgen.
Synodal church, one which goes forward and which always seeks peace, charity, and to be close to those who suffer. Today,
il giorno della supplica alla Madonna di Pompei.
This is the day of the supplication to the Madonna of Pompeii. Our Mother Mary always wanted to accompany us and be near us, to help us with her love. And I should like to, therefore, pray together with you. Let us pray for this new mission, for the entire church and for peace in the world. And let us ask for this special grace from Mary, our God. Hail Mary, full of grace. You are blessed amongst all women, and blessed be the fruit of your womb. Holy Mary, pray for us sinners, and be present at the hour of our death. Amen.
Yippee! Will people take an American Pope seriously? I mean, he spent more time in Rome and in Peru than he spent in America, right? So it's not like he's tainted by our stink. And not too much, at least. I'd like to point out that he only spoke Italian and Spanish, despite being American during the ceremony. Yeah, he probably wants to avoid the allegations. Somebody linked this earlier. Cardinal George of Chicago of happy memory was one of my great mentors, and he said, I believe the person speaking right here is the current pope, but like this is an older quote. And he said, look, until America goes into political decline, there won't be an American pope. And his point was, if America's kind of running the world politically, culturally, economically, they don't want America running the world religiously. So I think there's some truth to that we're such a superpower and so dominant, they don't want to give us also control over the church. So make of that what you will. That was not him who said that. Damn. Ah, well. Let me see if I can find the source for the quote. Here. Cardinal George of Chicago of happy memory. That should get it. Barron spent days speaking with the cardinals, including the 133 cardinal electors tasked with electing the new pope as they tried to figure out amongst themselves. Okay, this is from Robert Barron, Bishop of the Diocese of Winona Rochester in Minnesota. appointed less than a week ago by President Trump to the new White House Commission on Religious Liberty. Huh. Well, that's funnier. Hold on. So this was him like 2 days ago. He was like, yeah, they're not going to choose an American pope. America would have to be in decline for them to do that. That's funny. Can we look at more of the new Pope's Twitter posts? Pray for Pope Francis. Pope Francis's health is improving. Condemnation of J.D. Vance's Ordo Amoris. J.D. Vance is... Oh, this one's from him, not a retweet. J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. Some gay-ass religious bullshit. Beep beep car. Yeah, not a huge Twitter presence. Definitely came back into spirit after Trump got elected, though, so, you know. From his article. Vance's argument echoes a medieval concept known as Ordo Amoris, the order of charity, often attributed to St. Thomas Aquinas. The idea is that love must be ranked, that a person rightly prioritizes their affections with family on top. In some ways, it sounds practical, even reasonable. Love is not meant to be an abstraction floating in ideals without real-world engagement. But the problem with this hierarchy is that it feeds the myth that some people are more deserving of our care than others. It's a framework that makes sense in a world governed by scarcity and fear, where protection comes at the expense of others. But Jesus never speaks of love as something to be rationed. He speaks of love as abundance, a table where there is enough for everyone. Colonial ideology has conditioned us to think in binaries and hierarchies. Who is in and who is out, who is first and who is last. We struggle to fathom a love that is not ranked, that does not sort people into categories of worthiness. But Jesus seemed to be inviting us into a different world altogether, one where love moves freely and without hierarchy, breaking down the borders we've been taught to build. Pretty good. Here's the full article. It ought to be clear that Catholics cannot support a rhetoric that demonizes immigrants as dangerously criminal, simply because they have crossed the border in search of a better life for themselves and their family. It ought to be clear that Catholics cannot celebrate aggressive deportation enforcement as a spectacle. It ought to be clear that Catholics cannot accept a theory of love that pats itself on the back for putting some of the poorest among us farthest from our concern and charity. Right now, many American Catholics do support and even cheer on attitudes towards immigrants that show little signs of having been transformed or challenged by the gospel. Rather than continuing to try to justify ourselves, we need to hear Jesus asking us, who is neighbor to the immigrant in the border, to the immigrant in your cities, to the immigrant in detention or being deported? Average American Catholic will be like, my neighbor? My neighbor's next door, dumbass. What the fuck is a Samaritan? The gospel does not offer a charter for how to legislate about immigration. It does offer a standard for how far we are to go to love our neighbor, and a refusal to accept the limits we might be comfortable with on who our neighbors are. The question we need to answer is whether we judge our politics according to the gospel or the other way around. Damn. Are American Catholics really Catholic? Yes, if they're from Mexico, but as soon as they vote Republican, they turn into Protestants. This looks like it was written by AI. Your brain is cooked. This is written by a cardinal. Well, wait. No, not by a cardinal. It was reposted by a cardinal. It was written by this guy. It's not AI. Fuck you. Dude, I am on one today with, attribute this to X? No, it's from Y. I'm so fucking tired. Cardinal.ai. And if American Catholics are in political office, they're actually worshippers of Mammon. True! If you look at the Bible, it strongly supports immigration into Canaan. I mean, have you heard of this Jesus guy? It's pretty progressive, I hear. Dan Henschel tweets, keep winning. Dan Henschel, conservatives, Jesus. I think this has been edited. I don't think it originally had the if conservatives meant Muslims part. It's true, though. The Pope retweets Snoopy memes. First boomer joke tweet Pope. All right. Translators? Help me out here. Conservatives in a Discord I'm in are malding. They were like, fuck yeah, American Pope, until they realized he was woke. Fake-ass Catholics. Google Lens? I'm not Google Lensing it. But Snoopy, there are so many people smarter than me. Of course there are, but most of them are asymptomatic. That's cute. That's a cute little boomer joke. That's cute. What does asymptomatic mean in that context? He's saying there are people smarter than you, but they don't act like it, so it doesn't matter that much. Sorry, I was reading the article. GOP centrist revolt. No such thing. Okay, hello. I'm alive. Hello. Woo. I'm awake. I'm awake. I'm awake. They may have picked him to stop a schism in America, no joke. It does feel like every year brings us closer to having an Orthodox church-like schism in America, where the official Catholic Church of the United States is like a White House correspondent. You know what I mean? And despite pretending to be Protestant this whole time, Trump, like, gets along with him and does, like, a little fake ceremony with him every morning. New Pope retweeting a Dem senator calling out GOP for voting against gun control after a mass shooting. Damn, you're going back all the way to 2017? Yeah, okay, but what's his position on being a homo? Keck W? He made some statements back like 12, 13 years ago where he was critical of some progressive, like proposed doctrine within the church because he said that, he criticized media for promoting un-Catholic lifestyles, and he said that there are some progressive edicts that would not be accepted by more conservative, members of the flock, like in places in Africa, something like that. But I think all of those statements are from quite a while ago. He was also against teaching about gender in schools. See, I saw that on the Wikipedia page, but I didn't see a clear attribution. I would like to see that. I would like to see, like, what context that statement was made in. You know? Yeah, he needs to say new things about gay people, basically. Where Pope Leo stands on specific issues. I really do think that on a lot of these, he just hasn't spoken for a long time. We're extrapolating positions from a while ago. Oh, okay, hold on. This is more recent stuff. The Catholic Church has been firm on its stance that homosexuality is a sin. Really, Time? At least that means it's not AI written. And same-sex couples cannot be married within the church. But in October 2023, a letter by Francis in support of the blessings of same-sex unions on a case-by-case basis was made public. We cannot be judges who only deny, push back, and exclude, Francis wrote to a group of conservative cardinals. As such, pastoral prudence must adequately discern whether there are forms of blessing requested by one or several people that do not convey a wrong idea of matrimony. Because when one seeks a blessing, one is requesting help from God. It's gonna take, like, an insane leap in a doctrinal sense to make the Catholic Church not homophobic. Because, like, the problem, again, is that there are plenty of Protestant churches that will marry you. And they can do that because Protestantism isn't a real religion. It's fake. There's no central authority. Anyone can do anything they want. There's no expectations. Hold your love in your heart. The Catholic Church has, like, giant, dusty-ass, yellowed tomes of gospel and doctrine going back millennia. So, like, the idea of, like, what kind of insane turnabout you would need to accept gay marriage. Pope Francis, though, I mean, very progressive, right? Very clearly trying to warm people up to the idea of, like, hey, listen, we can't do gay marriage and homosexuality is still clearly a sin, but they still deserve love from God as people and as a union, right? Even if not as a marriage, we should at least accept the idea of civil unions, which isn't, I mean, I'm not a scholar of Catholic theology. I don't know how well that slides. Obviously, we're not dealing with like real religious, rules here. We're dealing with human bigotry, but don't really know like how you square that circle. Leo's stance on LGBTQ plus Catholics marks a departure from the late pontiff, according to the College of Cardinals report. In October 2024, okay, so this is recent, Prevost voiced the need for greater conversations between each episcopal conference to discuss the blessings and apply them in a way that align with cultural differences across the globe, as some countries still criminalize homosexuality. Okay, that seems reasonable. Episcopal. Listen, I'm trying my best, okay? There's a lot of words. The bishops in the episcopal conferences of Africa were basically saying that here in Africa, our whole cultural reality is very different. It wasn't rejecting the teaching authority of Rome. It was saying our cultural situation is such the application of this document is just not going to work. That seems reasonable. Provost reportedly said. You have to remember there are still places in Africa that apply the death penalty, for example, for people who are living in a homosexual relationship. So we're in very different worlds. So he's not arguing against the authority of Rome to apply rules regarding the blessing of same-sex civil unions or whatever. He's just saying that in a practical sense, you can say this to more conservative, cultures, but it's not going to do anything. Kind of a square the circle question. This isn't really a reactionary sentiment, it's just pragmatic. In a report assessing his opinions regarding queer couples, the New York Times cited a 2012 statement from Leo in which he expressed dismay at the way media and pop culture expressed, quote, sympathy for beliefs and practices that contradict the gospel. He is talking about queer couples here, right? Because the statement, the media and pop culture express sympathy for beliefs and practices that contradict the gospel, that doesn't necessarily refer to queer couples. I assume he's talking about queer couples here. Francis was openly critical of laws criminalizing LGBTQ plus people, calling them unjust, and was generally seen as a supporter of greater inclusion in the church. Helping migrants. His stance on immigration is right alongside Francis's. Equality for women. Pope Leo has been firm in his stance against the ordainment of women, falling in line with Pope Francis's own opinion. Something that needs to be said also is that ordaining women, and there's been some women that have said this interestingly enough, clericalizing women doesn't necessarily solve a problem, it might make a new problem, he said. True. He is to the left of Democrats on immigration, that's true. This is another one of those things where it's like, I don't even know how much you can do politically. There is so much doctrine on the difference between men and women in the eyes of God. This isn't even about like transgenderism or anything. This is just about like on a fundamental level, the idea of the ordainment of women. Like, isn't there an insane amount of not just precedent, but like writing? You would have to undo so much. Like, as the Pope, I guess, I mean, if you're sitting in the chair, you can say whatever the fuck you want. But in a practical sense, nobody would accept it. Francis had a saying that to reform the church is to clean St. Peter's Square with a toothbrush. That's cute. I don't think you can contradict the Bible as a pope. No, you can't. Your papal infallibility doesn't extend to direct contradictions of existing theology. Though I don't actually know how specific the Bible gets about the ordainment of women. I'm not actually sure. I just don't know. I don't know like what the formal rules are, how much of it is norm, how much of it is practice, how much of it is it's written in the Old Testament. I don't know. There's a papal document which forbade the ordainment of women, which is the reason Francis is against it, to not break that document. it directly says they can't, like from Peter himself, then that just might never change. That just might never change, right? You'd have to really like women to get that through. I don't know. I feel like you could probably do a lot to elevate women within the Catholic Church without necessarily ordaining them. Ordaining women might just be a no-go. Like, as long as the Catholic Church is the institution that it is, more or less, it might just not be a viable... that just might not be a path through. And keep in mind, by the way, any doctrine coming down from the Vatican, from the Holy See, that shit has to apply everywhere. It's not like making national policy changes. Like, oh, over here in America, you can do this, but over here in Zimbabwe, you can do this. Like, any doctrine you introduce, that applies to the church. So you need to impose rules that you know are going to be more or less accepted everywhere. Could give nuns more power and authority. There's probably some stuff you could do, but that would get a bit in the weeds, and I'm not an expert on it. I don't really know. He did point to the appointment of women to higher leadership positions under Francis as evidence contribute a great deal to the life of the church. Yeah, Francis did appoint some powerful women, didn't he? Just not, he didn't ordain them. Francis chose the first woman to sit at the board level in the church's central administration, including at the influential department of choosing bishops. That's pretty impressive, right? Francis was a pretty cool guy, I feel. It's why I'm a little bit cautious when I see headlines like this. Pope Francis leaves mixed legacy on role of women in Catholic Church. He made strides in boosting female workforce in Vatican, but insisted women could never become priests. I don't really know if that's a mixed legacy, right? Because a mixed legacy implies that he did some good and he did some bad, but the statement that women can't become priests kind of seems like it's not really up to him. I mean, like, you know what I mean? It would be like, it would be like you're looking at like a civil rights leader from like, I don't know, like 200 years ago. And you're like, well, on the plus side, they advanced the line on basically every issue. But on the negative side, like they weren't literally third wave feminists. You know what I mean? It's kind of an upper bound on that sort of thing. Pope Francis similarly signaled greater support for women leadership during his 12-year papacy, giving them the right to vote during synods and appointing women to senior positions while noting they could not become priests. Still, Francis made pointed actions to show his support. In 2024, he washed the feet of Roman prisoners from a female prison, marking the first time a pope had only washed the feet of women. Huh. I mean, is there papal infallibility or not? There's two considerations, right? For one, there's can he do it in a doctrinal sense, and for two, it's can he do it in a practical sense. In a practical sense, the order that women can become priests would cause basically 3/4 of the world to catch on fire. Like a significant portion of the Catholic flock would not engage with that information very well. Like that's an insane jump. And also there are limits to what the Pope can do in terms of contradicting like direct theology, right? And depending on how far down the women can't become ordained things go, it's possible that practically, like, a pope can't really change that. Not within our lifetimes, at least. It'd be bigger than the actual Great Schism. Yeah, I know it's difficult to keep this in mind for, like, lefty Gen Zs who spend all their time online. But in many places in the world, there's actually still considered to be a significant spiritual distinction between men and women. I feel like a lot of those people would really not take to the first American Pope, day 3. It turns out that actually 2,000 years of, male-only priesthood, it's over, buddy. Francis commissioned a research panel on the possibility of making women deacons. After studying the scripture and papal doctrine, it was concluded it wasn't allowed under doctrine. Huh. A goddamn research panel. This guy really did everything he could, huh? Yeah, just last year. The research panel was gender balanced too. The pontiff appointed an equal number of male and female experts as members of the commission, which will be led by Archbishop Luis Francisco Ladaria, a Jesuit who serves as the second in command of the Vatican's doctrinal congregation. Okay, it seems like he kind of, he assembled like the Power Rangers to figure this out. A research team led by a Jesuit archbishop who presides over the doctrinal congregation. I don't know. It seems like he utter woke nonsense, parentheses based. The Study Commission on the Women's Diaconate. The commission's members include experts in patristic theology, ecclesiology, and spirituality. Franciscan Saint Mary Milone, who heads Rome's Pontifical University Antonianum, and Felix Zagano, a senior research associate in residence at Hofstra University in New York and also an NCR columnist. 6 members of pontifical universities, 4 members of the Vatican's International Theological Commission, and 1 member of the Pontifical Biblical Commission. 6 priests, 4 laywomen, and 2 women religious. Goddamn assembling the squad. Sorry, we assembled a team of the world's smartest, most talented, and most well-funded religious scholars. And after thorough examination of the Bible, I'm really sorry. Bitches can't be ordained. I'm sorry. It's in the text. It's very clear. We looked for loopholes. We looked for workarounds. Zagano said in a brief interview with NCR Tuesday afternoon, the creation of the commission was, quote, a wonderful opportunity for the church as a whole to look at the question of restoring women to the diaconate. Do you have any idea how uncommon a sentiment like this would be? Within the... Okay, for what... Can you imagine a head officer of the Vatican saying some shit like that 20 years ago? Yeah, we assembled like a woke cabinet to investigate the wonderful opportunity for the church as a whole to look at the question of restoring women to the diaconate. It's just not... Women aren't spiritually different than men, and spirituality isn't real. Well, that's a very compelling argument. You should bring that to Rome. Mods, burn that cheddar at the stake. Mods, bring that chatter to the papal dungeons and twist his testicles for 16 months until he confesses to heresy, then burn him at the stake in the middle of St. Peter's Square. Mods! Remove that man's fingernails. These mods can do a lot of shit. Yeah, they're a crack team. Anyway.
For the Catholic Church.
Gloria, I think a lot of people, too, obviously are focusing on the fact this is the first American pope, but also his age. You know, the new pope is 69 years old. The average pope over the last 2 centuries has served about 14 years. So over those 14 years, if he has 14 years, there's a lot that could be done. Which direction do you see him steering the church?
Gosh, you know, that's a great question. I just know as the Pope, he has the moral compass that will guide the church across the map of time. So whatever the major challenges are to understanding human dignity, I think are the things that he's going to deal with. He has to, I'm sure, have some thoughts on AI. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts on, you know, rampant abuses of the human person, an obsession with wealth and power. And also, I think, focusing us on prayer because of his life as a man of contemplative prayer.
What's your take? Do you think we would have had an American Pope if Trump hadn't been in the White House? That's a big question.
It is.
I know it's a lot, but
it's an interesting question.
It's a dynamic, right?
It's a dynamic, certainly. You know, we were talking earlier about the view of the Vatican towards the United States. It's complicated, right? It's not entirely favorable. The Catholic Church is a very powerful, the American Catholic Church is a very powerful one in the Vatican, but it's sort of looked down on in some ways because of that. It was certainly a hotbed of resistance to Francis. And then, yeah, the Trump question is a really interesting one because, you know, here's a pope who will now be able to speak to him in his own language, which Francis often said is important for speaking to a person's...
Hey, you spread some disinfo about Norse polytheism yesterday. Mods, we have another heretic. Valhalla wasn't the only good afterlife a person could get into. You could also go to Freya's afterlife, which was for artists and craftsmen. Well, that's like gay though, right? Because then the manly men would be that there. Can you imagine being like a warrior for 23 years of your life? You've butchered tons and tons of Normans or whatever, and then you like choke on a chicken bone while crafting a pot out of clay, and you go to Freya's afterlife, and you're surrounded by all the faffy little ponces who you ignored in your day-to-day. No! You'd be bringing Valhalla to Freya's afterlife, you know? You'd be chasing them, bludgeoning them with, you know, the pottery. That would suck. Very unfair system.
Part. At the same time, you know, here's Leo taking the name of a pope who stood up for workers. He spoke a lot about, he is from a place that is, you know, I'm so sorry.
He's from an area.
He's
Chicago
from an area
is
that
about
has,
workers'
yeah,
rights.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then also he has a soft spot for migrants and refugees because, you know, he spent all of his time in Peru. And so I think that, you know, he's going to be able to push back against Trump on some things as well in a way that the Vatican will be happy to see.
I am once again asking Vosh to change to a double compressor setup and ditch the limiter. You people are so... You know what? Fuck you. Fine. There. Are you happy now? Are you happy now? I see that shit blowing out. I see that shit redding. That's what I fucking thought.
Build a bridge to Trump.
Yes, because he is seen as a bridge builder, right?
He used that word, pontifex, when he was up
Exactly.
there. I mean, it does strike me that is one of the big themes, you know, that faces our world more generally, this theme of inequality, the global south rising up saying, what about us?
Right.
There are only a few people in the world who have $1 billion, and there are millions and millions of people who have nothing.
Exactly. And it's so interesting of them to choose someone who has all this experience in Peru to then go follow Francis.
How about that?
Follow the first Latin American pope.
No limiter.
Literally a bridge between North America and South America.
Yes.
In that kind of very simple way. So what do you imagine his day-to-day might look like? Do you think he'll be back in the Apostolic Palace, or do you think Santa Marta? And you know, his leadership style, do we have any clues about what he's been like? I mean, his missionary work in Peru, does that give us a...
Sure. Well, so I do think it's probably likely that we'll see him back in the Apostolic Palace. I'm just going off of the Mosetta thing here. In terms of his leadership in Peru, one thing that's really telling that I've heard from people who knew his work there is that he really tried to empower the local people to kind of take ownership over a church. You know, it's very easy for a missionary to come and say, okay, I'm delegating all of the tasks to missionaries, and that's fine. Or even to recruit a lot of local priests, but maybe never elevate them to leadership positions. He did elevate them to leadership positions, and not just elevated them and left them to flounder, but really taught them and formed them as leaders, as capable people who could then continue the mission of the church there. And the administration.
I've fiddled with it more. How does it sound now?
I think that gives us a clue as to what he'll be like as a leader of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics.
Cannot wait to see it. It's going to be fascinating, and I know you'll be watching it all, and you'll be talking about it on Inside the Vatican as well. Colleen Dully, thank you very much. I know Patrick Revel, our correspondent, is...
Breaking a bit. How is it breaking? What's Okay, no, just tell me. Just tell me what's breaking. What's breaking? Bad, exactly the same. It sounds the same, but it's bad. Okay, great. This is why I don't change audio settings, by the way.
Is in Rome. Patrick, you are in the Vatican, I think, or just in Rome. Where are you, and how are you, and what are you seeing and feeling?
Hi, James. I'm in the Vatican, and I very much know I am,
all right,
because I can hear from St. Peter's Square now some quite beautiful singing floating up to us. And, you know, it's been a remarkable day, obviously, but it's been an extraordinary atmosphere that is changing now, that's moving from those roars of that crowd to this sort of sense of something much more peaceful on the square now, as people really around the world are preparing to welcome this new Pope and try to learn more about him and understand who he is. But I think, you know, it's worth saying this was such a...
What is with this man's face? Is he just really skinny? People who watch live streams, when they encounter somebody with a BMI... fuck, I don't know the BMI table. Below 14? Body fat percentage below 12. There we go.
Big surprise, right? I think going into this, while his name had been mentioned as a possible contender, he was not seen as someone who was in the front runners by any means at all. And so I think when his name was read out by the proto-deacon on the balcony, there was a moment where people tried to understand what they were hearing. I think there was a moment of surprise and then shock, and this real surprise.
Below 14 is like 100 pounds at 6 foot. I don't keep up with the BMI table. I don't know what the trends are these days. BMI is a stupid fucking system anyway. Who cares?
Because, you know, of course, there has never been an American pope, because as you were discussing this taboo on this idea of not wanting to give America basically even more power in the world, this sense among cardinals that America was powerful enough, embroiled enough in enough complicated political issues around the world that they wanted to avoid it. But clearly something has changed significantly here, James.
But he is going to have to be a little bit embroiled in global affairs, because the Pope now necessarily is a global leader. Talk to us a little bit about some of the major issues facing the world on, you know, we're talking about Ukraine, Gaza, India, Pakistan. That kind of kicked off during conclave. Some of these issues that now this new Pope is going to have to face.
Yeah, James, I mean, the list of issues facing him is pretty staggering, really.
I want to see what Fox News has to say. What do you got, Fox?
Very special moment.
Very special moment.
And here he is.
Okay, no, this is just the section of them doing the live coverage, so they're not going to say anything particularly interesting. Slop as always. Well, this will just be a live reaction thing. No, the people in the comments seem happy. Leo said jack shit about Gaza during this. Didn't he just speak for like 10 minutes about like peace and love and brotherliness and Jesus Christ? Should he have mentioned like a specific conflict during his acceptance speech for the papacy? I feel like it would make more sense for him to... He's been the Pope for like 3 hours. Give him a second.